Metro Council. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd. It is shortly past 3:30, and I detect a quorum. So thank you, Chair Gamble, Sepulveda, Parker, and Bradford for joining us today. Okay. So we've got a fairly brief agenda today. Mr. Morrison sends his regards from the last week of the state legislature. It's a little busy up there this week. And so we will have him at our next.
Do you need to turn the, did you turn the button on?
Yeah, green thing's
okay.
okay. I'll double check you too.
It's not, yeah, I was gonna say, it just doesn't, the
The little
in-session light's
in-session
not
light is
on.
not on.
Oh, I'm seeing it live here. I can
Okay.
see myself. It says you are live, and I've
Okay,
got a
good.
stop meeting button, so it looks to be going.
We're live on.
Okay.
Great,
A minute.
excellent.
Great. Where was I? About, no worries.
It's the last week.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morrison. And so he will join us at our next executive committee. I think potentially with that to be our primary topic, right? Just kind of for an end of session update. And just a discussion of how things have gone this first year. So we look forward to that, and we appreciate his efforts on the city's behalf. So that's why our agenda looks a little bit different today. Just by way of some brief updates from me as we enter into our council office updates, and because we're having a transportation-related meeting this afternoon, specially called, I wanted to bring Chair's attention to, as you all will often have guests potentially, not often, but sometimes you will have guests for your committees or specially called. We now have kind of redone our directions for the office officially. Hello, Tim. Welcome to you. No worries. Thank you for joining us. And Ms. Gamble, I don't know if everybody has the directions document. Y'all all have that?
It was in my little
piles, yeah.
pile of things.
And so basically, our location, obviously, but I think also from a wayfinding perspective, like how you get into the garage, how you get up from the garage. There has been a fair amount of community confusion around a private garage called the Public Square Garage. Kind of highlighting the fact that the garage for this building is under the building. So we're trying to help folks find us. And then we're flipping the script a little bit, y'all, and we are sharing with people how to arrive by transit, biking and bike share, driving and parking, and then ride share, drop off and pick up. And so these have been checked, double checked. And so these will be reflected soon on our website. And then this can be a standalone document if you want to share it with a guest. So I appreciate staff getting, we did a lot of turns on that, but we really wanted to elevate how accessible we are by transit because, as we'll say for the public, if anyone's watching, it's only a block away from here. We go central, so it can be a good option for folks if they're aware about it. So I encourage you all, as you do your community meetings and any events that you are holding. Ms. Hayes has spoken with Mr. Byer at WeGo, and so we kind of have a top list of places that we frequently hold community meetings, and if you have those sort of standard places that you like to host those meetings, like our community centers, parks, making sure that we're elevating how to get there on transit, and kind of incorporating that every time in our directions to folks, right? Like not just how to drive there. We understand that's typically still primarily the way people get places, but just for community awareness. So I appreciate the office working with MTA and starting to kind of operationalize that. And that will then be among the things, and you'll see when we get to our next item, but some of the back of house things that support the services that the staff is now rendering, particular to your community meetings. When you need assistance and support for those meetings, Ms. Cruz has established a form such that, and Margaret will kind of share the point of engagement to say, hey, I'm having this community meeting, right? And then you will be sent a link, and I need AV, I need to find a place, I need comment cards, I need an agenda, kind of all that cohort of things that you might need to support your meeting. And among those, right, then being those directions and things like that. So anyway, just wanted to mention the directions document as we got started. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I did want to share, Maria Calder has kindly been her this committee's vote garnering some dinner funds from folks just for this kind of second half of this term. And I think all but 6 members have contributed to that. We've ordered dinner, I think 4 or 5 times thus far. So want to appreciate her for organizing that and maintaining that. And hopefully we can keep folks from getting hangry and keeping healthy and having eaten for our meals. So that is good to know that that's working out okay. And then as well, from my end, and I think Hannah's as well, all members have now signed up for and gone through the process for Council Connect. So Hannah, can you share what that will then mean now going forward?
Yeah. So because everyone has signed up, we're going to kind of launch a new feature. We are going to add all the council members onto like a portion of the site that will allow you to get an email automatically whenever a new comment is posted to the site. It's not something that you guys can opt into or out of, like, on the site though, so that is one thing to keep in mind. So I think what we're gonna do to start is probably, you know, send it to council members at nashville.gov, and as people, you know, you know, as it goes through, you know, we can kind of decide what to do about opting people out.
Yes, okay, if they so choose. I would encourage folks not to opt out, just set up an inbox rule for that. And so in that way, you're gonna see in your inbox, you know, so-and-so has commented, or, you know, it'll activate it more, and you will always have a link in that email, right? So it won't just be sort of dead link, notice somebody post a comment, so what? It will link you right back to that forum.
It'll
So
tell you who commented and the content of the comment, and a link to take you directly there.
That's great.
yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that will really kind of get us going. So thank you to Hannah. We had quite a lot of getting some of those stragglers across the finish line just in the last week. So everybody has done the training and is registered and has signed their appropriate materials per state law. So we'll be sending out, Hannah, either tomorrow or maybe later today, that extra information, new feature. What, tomorrow? Okay, good, that's fine, thank you. Okay, so that was it from me, and so I'm gonna turn it over to you, Margaret. So council members, or chairs rather, we've discussed previously looking at kind of a directory of services, things that council staff can do to support members. This is not intended to be an exhaustive list of everything that staff can do, but the thought is kind of in parsing it in this way that it will highlight those things. And so I will turn it over to Ms. Darby to share about that.
So you got in front of you the services directory. There's a table of contents on the front page to take you to all the different areas that we've identified as kind of the main areas where council members contact our office affirmatively asking for something. Whether it's legislative, scheduling, some administrative detail, constituent service related, technology, we get all of that, communications, HR and finance. Those are the big, broad areas. If you go and look inside the document, you will see lots of charts. And so the charts are laid out in a way that you, as a council member, can say, what do I need? Oh, I need to request some legislation. Who do I contact for that? I contact Margaret and Hannah, both of us, not just one of us. We require things in writing before we do, legislation for you. It says that in here too. For areas where there's a rule that supports, what the service might be, I have included the rule number in here so that you can go pull up those rules if you want to get a little bit more information about it. So, for instance, if you want to amend a piece of legislation, there's a deadline for that. We have a rule specifically on point, and I've directed you to that rule. So legislative, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. I think that most council members probably are already familiar with all of these and who to contact for all of these particular types of services. If there's something in here that is, and I'll tell you that part of the process for developing this document was to talk to everybody in our office and say, I have the basic question: what do council members contact you for? Tell me what it is, and we, started compiling all of that. So this is all from the perspective of that direction of conversation. This is not a council member. Staff members do this all day, and here's so you know what they're doing all day. That's not what this document is for. It's specifically for council members to be able to scroll down and say, "Oh, I didn't know I could ask for that," But we clearly do it because we've been asked by other council members for whatever the service is. Most of you probably already are familiar with all the legislative items, scheduling. The last time we were here, we talked a lot about scheduling. We have an additional document to kind of point out all of the scheduling procedures and policies that we follow to get things calendared. But this kind of breaks it down into all these different areas for requests that y'all make and other council members make regarding all the scheduling. And this brings us to, I think, the first instance on the list of a new email that has been set up called councilrequest@nashville.gov. You'll see that throughout this document. It appears over and over again. When you send an email to councilrequest@nashville.gov, it will go to our administrative staff, and they will take that email and put it into a system that allows that team to kind of decide who's going to handle this and track what they're doing. And that's, Karina, Rosie, Rashad, Melanie, and in some cases Eleanor probably gets that as well. But it'll go to that group of people and they'll decide who handles it. Once you send that email, whoever picks up that task or picks up that assignment will send you an email back saying, "Hey, I've got this, I'm working on it, and I'll be in contact with you in a couple of days," or they'll contact you and ask for more information about what it is that you are requesting. I just noticed that a couple of these don't include a little disclaimer in here, which is, and this is very important, if you're making a legislative request or a request about something, requesting some legal information, or some sort of ethics request or something that we get periodically, do not send it to councilrequest@nashville.gov. Everything that goes there will be public record, so you will not be able to, it will not maintain that client confidentiality or that client privilege communication if you send it to that email address. I've just noticed 2 spaces in here where I've managed to miss adding that information, so that'll be updated. Which kind of brings me to another point, which is this document is a living document. It'll be, it'll change periodically. We'll have staff turnover, it'll change. We'll discover that, oh, there's this other question that we get periodically or get pretty regularly, let's go ahead and add that in here. So expect for it to be updated periodically. Let's see. One thing I haven't put in here, but when I send this out to all the full council, I will just be letting everyone know that for questions that are not covered, but that you do have, if you need general information, email me. I'm gonna make sure that what you need gets accomplished. So, the second email in here that is not an individual's email is the Council Connect support at Nashville.gov. It's under the technology section. So if you have any questions regarding Council Connect, or you want to, send out a Council Connect thread or post or what have you, you would send it to this email address. Hannah and Kenya Gilchrist with ITS both receive those emails and will, address whatever your request is. Let's see.
I'm going to touch base on the communication section. Is that somewhat new?
The communication section, we've got the two items in here. This I see expanding in the future, but for the current purposes, the daily news updates and draft press releases and media advisories, those would both go to Eleanor, our PIO.
And then Margaret, we still have pending with you, right, kind of a standard operating procedure for press releases and stuff. So once that is in place, then that'll sort of augment this, and we can communicate a little more intentionally with the body about, do press releases for these things, but not for these things, and this reflect, and kind of all those protocols. And I know that's a space that members have cared a lot about, but we will get there.
For as many times as I and everybody else has looked at this document, there is still a typo on page 10 that'll need to be corrected.
That's why it says at the top, it's a draft, not for distribution.
It's not council resources, it's council requests,
Yeah.
so it'll be corrected.
Right, and for any members or other chairs that may be watching, again, part of why this is not ready for distribution is, yes, these emails are established, staff has been testing them in the background, especially that process of how they come in, to whom they get assigned, what is the auto message. So that's been happening for quite a few weeks, but not quite at kind of go live. So if any council members are listening online, don't start emailing to that email address yet, so.
Does anybody have any questions about this? That's fine.
Yes, Ms. Burton.
Thank you. This is great. I'm very handy, and so I don't have I guess my other question is this. Are we saying everything has to be by email only, or is it possible to put some phone numbers in here for some of the quick call to ask a question, or is everything supposed to be by email? Like, that's my only thing, is that I'm not always an email person, and sometimes I may have a quick question about scheduling and just a clarification. Is there a number to call for any of these people?
Yeah, the number, there is nothing that prohibits you from reaching out by phone to anybody in our office. So you can feel free to call. I've made reference to requiring things via email, and that's primarily for legislation. We will ask, and you already know this because we do this on a regular basis. If you call us and ask for legislation, we say, that's great, we'll talk to you about it, we'll get, we'll kind of hammer out and talk through some of the details, but I need you to send it to me in legislation so I can kind of add it into our system. We're trying to create something similar to that on the administrative side. So if you are asking for, some sort of letter to be created or whatever your request might be on the in the administrative scheduling section, that you send that to that council request at Nashville.gov, just to kind of get it into that system so that all the staff members know who's working on what. But that said, nothing prohibits you from picking up the phone and calling somebody and asking a quick question about something.
So if you do
And you
say
have
that,
you have all of our numbers, and you've got the main council office number that's already been provided to you in your binder.
so I guess what I'm trying to say, so if I send that email for the request, do I get like a confirmation?
Yes. Yeah.
Immediately back that
Yes.
it's been received and it's been worked on
Yes.
and, okay.
You will get a confirmation, and then whoever is assigned the task will also reach out to you either with a conclusion, an answer to your question, or reach out to you to, to start digging into whatever your request is.
I think it would be helpful for me, and I don't know about others, that I don't have two different directories. I don't have a phone directory and I don't have a this services directory. If it's a way to add the phone numbers, not to all of them, but to some of the ones that mine, I think it would be helpful. Then that way I can know that this is the one thing that I need to look at when I'm trying to figure out who to talk to.
I know, we might just add another page at the end that says, here are the
There we
telephone
go.
numbers.
See?
If I
Go
may,
ahead,
just
Chair.
on
Or-
finding people's numbers, something I find helpful sometimes is like you type in their email address in Outlook and then just click their name when it comes up, and it'll take you to a little profile that has their office phone number in it.
Yeah, that too.
Thank you.
Or we don't have to go to the page and pull it up.
Well, it does, okay. Thank
Chair
you.
Sepulveda, go ahead.
When do we get the information about press releases?
Margaret?
Yeah, I'm working on a policy for that. It's not final yet, but I don't know, probably in the next couple of weeks. I've been working on this, so.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions about this or feedback? Go ahead, Chair Bradford.
I have a question. It may be related, maybe not. It's kind of, we were talking about scheduling meetings and whatnot. There's been some, I don't know if there's rumors or conversations that going forward, any open record or public meeting has to be held on Metro property. What's the latest on that? Is that official or is it still just in conversations?
Ms. Darby, do you want to address
So
that?
for an official Metro body meeting, it needs to be on Metro government property.
That's currently, I think, in the code.
I think it's in the code, yeah.
But like
It's-
if we're having just a community meeting or anything like that?
Community meetings can be out in your community, those don't need to be on government property. But, people have asked me the question about, somebody's having a community meeting at their house, should I attend, is that okay? You probably wanna be extra cautious about having community meetings in places that are not generally open to the public. So if another question that's come up is about having meetings in restaurants. Well, I mean, if the restaurant is, in some sort of age-restricted venue, no, that's not a public meeting. You can't have barriers to the public coming into your public meeting.
Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you. My only thought, looking through this, and this is super helpful, like I would have loved to have this document when I first started. That would have saved me a lot, especially since we weren't in the office and in person. It was, like there were people I didn't meet for the first 2 years of the term that were in staff. So anyway, Mike, quickly, is there any, it's great to know that Ms. Valdez and Mr. Wilkinson can handle requests to boards and commissions for letters of support or opposition. I think a lot of us become familiar with planning commission and BZA very quickly, but sometimes it's hard to look up, well, who do I actually email at this board and commission? But so for is there any, and I don't see one, but I wanted y'all's perspective because you've been looking at this, is there any advantage to the process for us to, I know who to email for stormwater, so should I just email them since I already know, or is there any reason that y'all want these all? I mean, I know you can't make everybody do it, but do you want them all going through Karina or Ms. Valdez, or do you?
No, this
Okay.
is if you don't know who to contact
Yes.
and you don't feel comfortable reaching out directly to a department and you want
Got
to
it.
take this path, this is a path that's available to you. And this is how to go about utilizing it.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I think last term, I think it was, or maybe even my first term, Ms. Fuqua, Barbara, kindly now looks at the board and commission agendas, because I was finding as a council member, there was a matter on the Parks Board agenda, nobody at Parks informed me about it, then it would come up and I was like, wait, what? And so whether that be Beer Board or Parks Board but I do think it would be helpful for members to kind of affirmatively know that, staff reviews that, because until you've gotten one of those emails, you don't necessarily know that those agendas are being reviewed to notify you. And then to your point, then, especially for a new member, that creates the knock-on question of, well, do I need to do anything about this? Like, oh, okay, well, there's a beer permit application. And I think, kind of advice for members, especially new members, I know those of us who are returning, kind of, you figure out your modus operandi, like for BZA. Like, I'm not gonna send a letter to the BZA for you to extend your porch 3 feet, right? But I can see how a new member might get sort of caught in that trap or that expectation, or we were talking about this, the member across the street sends something for every single BZA thing, so that, your colleague has set that precedent, you have that expectation. So, as Margaret has said, this is not to say you must do these things in this way, but to your point, well, I do actually want to send something to the Stormwater Review Commission. Who is that? Am I writing this letter in the right way? I don't really know how this board or commission went. Like, then staff can support you in that and make sure that it gets to the right place, right? But if you are perfectly comfortable with, planning commissioners at Nashville.gov and you're gonna kind of send off your thing, nobody's saying that you have to follow this pathway.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chair Bradford.
I may have seen it in the guidebook that we got at the beginning of this term, but kind of the following up on his question is not just boards and commissions, but sometimes I want to reach out to a department, but I don't know who their liaison is with the council. So if that's not already in the guidebook, is that something that could be put on here?
I think it's in the guidebook, and also this kind of goes back to like why this is a living document. Staff changes, so somebody who was the liaison at the beginning of the term may not be the liaison at the end of the term. So again, if you ever have questions about who that person is or who's best to contact on something, we can help you find out who that person is, or we can help facilitate that conversation between you and the department, whether it's a department head or a department liaison.
But that's a good point. I mean, in the same vein of you saying like, oh, okay, well, the phone list, just sort of, relisting the specific council liaisons. I mean, I would say now, I guess kind of with the addition of Mr. Roten at Parks, I'm not quite sure what that role is, but all the major departments with which we engage, increasingly over last term, right? Codes has the liaison, like we do have those established liaisons. So, we might, I know that was in the binder at the start, but we might just do a little.
Look and see if it's updated.
Yeah.
And not every department has liaisons. Some departments
Smaller
didn't have a
departments,
liaison
correct.
and now do, so, it's kind of changing and, and sometimes they get new staff, so we have to figure out who the new person to contact is.
Right, yeah, and some of those much smaller departments, often that is just, it's okay for a member to contact your director. That's always fine, but, okay. Is there any more feedback on this at this particular time? Obviously, you all can take this with you, give it a look. If you have any suggestions or questions, you can send those to Margaret. And we can do kind of one more turn on this before we send it out to the body. And then in a similar vein, Margaret, I guess last we met, you had shared the meeting scheduling policy, which you all were provided. And then I think, again, subsequent to the meeting, invited follow-up and comments. Did I understand that you did not hear back from anybody else? Okay.
Follow-up comments to the schedule, so.
Okay. All right, so this is something that I think, works in tandem with this document. Obviously, it was a scheduling meeting. This is just in my folder. It's not in front of you right now.
I wasn't at the last.
Okay.
It was emailed to us?
It was, yeah. Welcome your input on that. But, all these things sort of dovetail with each other, right? Because this was meeting scheduling policy that went to specially called versus caucus versus standing committee, et cetera. That then goes to the standard operating procedures of, what services are rendered to caucuses and the press releases. And so some of those just sort of procedural things are still in the queue, but we do have the meeting scheduling policy, barring some last minute input from you, Chair Sepulveda. If you missed that, this is at the finish line. So the kind of hierarchy meeting scheduling, this is pretty close to the finishing line. We discussed it today, and so invite your feedback on that. Chair Bradford.
I just have a couple of maybe new business items, so when we get done with that, I just
Okay.
like to ask those questions.
Let's see, so you all may have seen this at previous meeting as far as sort of a standard letterhead for members. This is, digital letterhead, essentially. We, for a very long time, used to have a static letterhead that I think Ms. Hayes, was that printed last in the 70s or the 80s or whatever, that had a little member of council on the side. I think we've all seen that with singular member. So appreciate very much Ms. Cruz and Ms. Hayes, kind of back of house, whether it be, our new format for our agendas that you all are seeing today, your comment cards for your meetings, this digital letterhead. This has a level of flexibility in it, like if you're co-doing a letter with somebody. So those are available now for every member as kind of a menu of updated things to provide. Ms. Hayes, can you share, I know we talked about the P.O. box. Did you get any insight on that from our mail house on P.O. box versus
Said it's
one
just
public
personal
square?
preference, but I've been told that we need to include that from other, Ms. Darby suggested it and some
Okay.
other, but
If you want mail delivered via USPS to our office, it needs to go to that mailing address. The 108, Suite 108 Public Square is for physical deliveries. And that's our physical location and.
Suite 204, you mean?
Sorry.
Old habits. Way in the back of your brain from legal department previously, yeah.
I was in 204, then 108, now back in 204. So 204 is the physical address, and that's where, your FedEx will deliver to. But as far as USPS, it needs to go to the P.O. Box number 19300.
And obviously, in a digital format, this does allow some customization, right? If you wanted to have your socials or otherwise on there. So I think that's the only other thing I've got on here. Anything else, staff, Ms. Darby, that you're wanting to update us on?
No.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, Mr. Bradford, anything updates that you want to request or ask for?
Two of them. First, when it comes to ordering the dinner for council meetings, I was wondering if we could have a conversation or get input from the body to allow maybe a 20-minute recess or a dinner break. One, so that way some council members who may not get an opportunity because they're committee chairs are reading off the reports. Two, I think Hannah and Matt would appreciate not having to run around, count, and guard the doors. So that could be something we can consider as either executive committee or just pose it to the body as a whole about having a brief 20-minute dinner recess. The other question, I've started having conversations with Ms. Darby and Hannah about having a more formal guide or document for committee chairs, kind of know what exactly are our responsibilities, what exactly we can or cannot do as a committee chair, so that we can, especially for anyone who has never been a chair before and becomes a chair, they kind of know what their authority is in the chamber. And I know last term there were some times when members would as a point of order, and they'd be told, well, that doesn't really matter here in a committee chamber, so maybe some kind of that FAQ or just guide that could be then put in added to our guidebook, so people kind of know, especially a committee chair knows what they can't do, what their role is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think we've talked before, Ms. Darby and I, this is a more informal setting in a committee room, right? And then, when you take a committee into chambers, which we have done increasingly, like for transportation and infrastructure is in there, that, just by virtue of the setup of the room, right? Like you feel like you're in this more kind of formal posture, but it's committee, thus, you're acknowledging the podium and staff is there to answer questions, but then that is not how we do questions in the main meeting, right? And some of the contrast that creates, I think is worth highlighting to folks. And I think, at our kind of next annual mark, that might provide an opportunity as some chairmanships will change, just for a little bit of a refresh on that for folks. So I appreciate that, and I will take the dinner break recess under consideration. I don't know, does anybody want to kind of comment on that at this juncture? Chair Parker?
So my concern is that, and this is the way that I feel about a lot of like rule changes or even procedural changes, is that like we're just trading a set of problems for another one. And so I'd generally rather just stick with the problems we have because we understand them and we know how to navigate them. Thinking back to being on the other side of the divider, if I'm sitting there waiting for the public hearing thing that I'm there for, and then all of a sudden everybody goes, oh, no, wait, time to eat, and then I'm just sitting back there for 20 minutes, I'm not going to be thrilled about that. I think when we take breaks because it's like we've had an intense discussion or because the meeting is tremendously long or something has happened that has sort of, we need a breather, I think that's very understandable to the public, but just kind of hopping up because the pizza got here, I don't love that. And also there's just not really space for 40 people to, I guess like if everybody kind of went out to the committee rooms and stuff, but it just, I don't know. I think what we have where we all go kind of stand and cram a slice of pizza and then run back in there is far from ideal, and it's certainly not perfect, but I don't know. We've all gotten kind of used to navigating that, and I, as much as I don't think it's ideal, I think I wouldn't even say it works, but it does get food in a lot of our mouths.
Pro Tem.
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
recognized.
I think 20 minutes is too long, but I do think walking in a 5-10 minutes break somewhere may not be a bad idea. And it could be after the public comment is over. That's around when you actually get hungry anyway. But I know for me, we don't need a rule change for one person, but I do know that there are times that I need to get up and pray. And because it's not an official recess, I'm torn between do I pray, do I stay, and do I go out? So there's a lot of things that go. Ramadan, I had to break my fast. And I'm sitting there like, okay, how long do I have to step out? People are talking and it looks as if I'm missing what they're saying. So those are the reasons why some of us might need official break. Now, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, maybe it'll be 5-10 minutes, but I think we need to work that somewhere in there especially for meetings that are taking a long time. So that would be my input on that.
If I may, just for that of like stepping away and being concerned about, sometimes what I'll do is just throw the YouTube on if I have to step out of the chamber, and it's kind of cumbersome and annoying, and people might be trying to talk to you in the hallway while you're eating a slice of pizza and you're holding a phone up to your ear to hear, but like it is a way to make sure that you're still following the
Can we have that TV on?
I just was going to be recognized, hopefully.
Yes,
and
yes,
that
Ms. Darby.
is, so we've been undertaking with MNN this big, long project of getting the televisions working.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we've tested thus far live at meetings is the use of this room in particular as the overflow room for Rules Committee, because we've been having bukus of people, as you all know, come through rules. So what we do is we can show from this room Committee Room 2, so that the overflow people can hear and see what's happening real time, there's no delay, what's going on in Committee Room 2, so they know to get up and go in there. The second part of that is, there are 3 parts, but the second part of that is to be able to also have these televisions live during a council meeting, so that when you do step out, if you need to come out and have a phone call or get your pizza or get a cup of tea or what have you, you can step into Committee Room 4 and see where we are on the agenda, and hear where we are on the agenda. That step is, they were testing it during the last council meeting, and so I haven't gotten the update from MNN about how that's operating and how it's working, but I think it's successful.
It seemed to be successful.
And so that's something that should aid you in knowing where we are on the agenda in there. And then the third prong of this project is the ability for presentations in the committee rooms, so that you can plug a computer in and see the presentation happening on the screen.
That was an early ask when we met with Mr. Durbin, is whether in one or in here, like, being able to facilitate that
And would-
outside of the chamber.
And if I may, I don't.
Yes, please, yeah, go ahead.
Would that be able to be on the YouTube feed as well?
We
The
asked
Screen in here?
Because if we're doing presentations and like we're having a discussion.
Yeah, it's prong number 3, and that's it's a good question to ask. I don't have an answer to that yet. I don't know if it would or not.
I
'cause
think that would be super cool if we could get the presentations working in here, but we do want to make sure those get to be part of the record.
In the chamber, they can, and I don't know if that it's because the chamber's set up differently.
I don't either, but again, that's not something that we're turning
Yeah.
on. We're not flipping the switch on that at this next meeting. It's something that's still in progress and we're working on, and it hasn't been demoed to me yet, so
Cool.
we don't.
And I think too, I mean, we've talked a fair amount about that, about kind of where to have what kind of meeting, and that spatially, we don't really have an optimal setup in this regard, because sometimes we will choose the chamber for its AV functionality, just like you're speaking to, but the chamber is not particularly well suited to the conversation we're trying to facilitate. And then if we go down to the jury assembly room, it requires a whole different sort of setup, which makes having any shared screen difficult to be on the live broadcast. And I know we had also elevated and inquired with MNN for getting the jury assembly room downstairs set up in such a way that it could be more optimal for our meeting, so that it does not require a special setup by ITS, but like the ceiling is, appropriately mic'd, and, for the different kind of meetings that happen in there. That room gets utilized a lot, so, yeah. Okay.
I
Yes,
just have one
Anna.
short addition to
Miss
the
Island.
dinner conversation, and I apologize because I'm probably speaking out of turn. But my suggestion might be to have dinner delivered before the meeting starts, maybe 5:30 or 6. Because one of the biggest things that I see is that we can tell when dinner is delivered because everybody gets up and leaves the room. And I know that, but the public doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And so it's just, if it's delivered early, then people might be able to kind of either get a bite at 6 or 6:30, 6:45, you can kind of trickle in and out.
Take that under advisement as well. Ms. Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you. The only problem with that is we normally only order dinner if we're gonna go long.
And
So this would
that's
be-
the thing.
Yeah, so
is
we
it
don't
goes
know if
into.
we're gonna go long.
But
Do we know at 6
last
o'clock?
meeting, we had dinner delivered at 9 and the meeting was
Yeah,
over.
right.
Or, we were about to, well, it felt like we were about to lose quorum at the end of the meeting. We were on the last item and it's because the pizza had been delivered.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
hard to gauge.
Yeah.
It's difficult to hit the mark on that. I have, and we, in an initial conversation, I did assert that I thought having food for council members was important, because it's important not to be hangry. Also, just functionally, spatially, there is not sufficient refrigerator space for everybody to bring their lunchbox and bring 40 different dinners. I mean, just functionally. But we have kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit on, is it only a public hearing night that we presume to go long? But we have had some of our public hearing nights be quite short.
Yes.
And nights that were not a public hearing night go longer, and thus we did not have dinner. So, we did operationalize dinner funds into the proposed budget. What I shared with Ms. Calder as to her collections, that was because we were already in a budget year, and I appreciate you all kind of supporting that, but we'll, I think, continue to discuss this. So, Chair Parker, go ahead.
So I like the idea of ordering earlier. My only thought is again, I'm usually trying to, I'd say closer to inhale than properly eat whatever it is, the piece of pizza or the pasta or whatever is here. So prior to the meeting, these halls are full of people. It's very I would feel very awkward with a bunch of guests and strangers standing in the kitchen and just being I just 2 bites per slice, so is it, I don't know if there's another space in the second floor that we can use. I mean, we
We could
don't.
put it in the council office. I mean, the other option is usually by 6, most people have cleared out unless
Yeah.
maybe rules is running long or something, but usually 6 is about the time that it starts to clear out.
What is the rule for when folks are supposed to clear out?
It's after the last committee. I think it's 15 minutes before the
15 minutes before
the meeting starts, but if the committee is still going on.
Yeah.
There'll still be people back
So
here.
question,
Tim.
and this question is for quorum. If we out having pizza or break praying or whatever we're doing, and we're able to watch the proceeding, does that still, do you still have to come and find us?
You have to be in the
You have to be in
room.
the room.
I
Participation.
think maybe if you can, maybe that door
Not
is
for the
propped open.
votes,
and
I know if you have to
everything,
vote, but just for the conversation, since we're still listening, I know for vote is a different thing, but even for just the conversation piece of it that we're watching in here,
You're supposed to be in the room.
just supposed to be.
27 members have to be.
Okay. I do think it would also help, Madam Chair, that at some point, it would be good also for the audience, especially people that come to speak, to know that people that step out, even if we don't go to a break, if we're still going to keep doing what we're doing the way we're doing it, for them to know that when members step out, they're not completely out of it, that they're actually able to still, because I think sometimes people feel like they're all getting out, nobody's listening to us, and that kind of complaint. Knowing that we're able to still listen while we're eating pizza, I think at least the perception from the public might be,
Okay, I will consider narrating in that regard. But I'll tell you, I mean, you're talking about people leaving and doing, and I'll tell y'all, I'm not necessarily conscious of that. I am very much up in my agenda, and I'm not necessarily aware of people kind of stepping out or not. But I appreciate the consideration of how that may appear to the public. Chair Sepulveda, yes.
Just real quick, with eating early, it's not a cultural thing for me. My earliest dinner is around 8 or 9. So it reminds me of college when I'm like, why is everyone eating so early and the cafeteria closes? Just as long as there's some saved, I think
Yeah,
that would
I think
help
that it's
me.
pretty common that we have food left over. I mean, sometimes we even have a couple of pizzas left over at the end of the night.
There, last term specifically, there were times where I would wait because the quorum, right, and I would go in there and there wouldn't
Same.
be.
Oh, well,
That happened to me
no
quite a few
food.
times, yeah, and I was like,
The
it's
difference
all
there
gone.
was that I think that wasn't, our staff was not in charge of that. That was, individual council members, and sometimes it was only for, 10 people had paid or something.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was a little bit of the challenge last time, is feeling appreciating, Ms. Hayes trying to administer and different members saying they would pitch in, and this member pitched in but then didn't get paid back, and it fundamentally seemed unfair, and so I think that's why we did the stepping off point of just asking everybody for the 50, and then again operationalizing that into the budget. But yeah, I think if we're ordering it for everybody, we'll just I appreciate that. We don't want to be. We should presume that there's other members that are going to follow you, right? Okay, we are about to close out. I do want to mention one more thing. As you all may be aware, we do have a pretty small Metro Council resources library. Elise is going to get all that into kind of a spreadsheet document so we know all the titles that we have, and we have sort of an informal checkout, but it's behind the partition area, kind of closer to my office.
I didn't know that.
And I have recently added this great book, and since our next thing is the Transportation Committee, we had about 2 copies of this, Human Transit by Jarrett Walker in the library. That was the earlier edition in 2015, but he now has an updated edition. I have purchased 3 of them for the council library, so they are available for checkout. And then I'm also excited, we may be working with the libraries, our public library, to have a corresponding online digital list that corresponds to our council office resource library, so that we can hopefully elevate some conversations around transportation and housing and the policy work that we do, and kind of elevate the community's awareness about that. So be on the lookout for new additions to the library. And as chairs, I would like to invite you all, anything that you think is important to your work. We have the affordable housing convening with Cumberland Region tomorrow. Shane Phillips, I think, was the guest speaker. We've got that book in our library, so anything.
Robert's rules.
Robert's Rules is in there. It's in there, although, they update that like every year. It's always out of date, yes.
Just a quick question on that. Could there be a way that we partner with libraries and say, if we find a book at the library that would be something we'd want to read, say, hey, could that be delivered to the council office so we can pick it up before a council meeting? Like, it'd be a delivery
Like we would
spot.
be a member of the Limitless Libraries. I'm not sure about that, but I will take it under advisement. So, okay, with that, Chair Parker needs to get to his meeting. Next is Transportation and Infrastructure with the Choose How You Move presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.